The Black Lives Matter movement is a Trojan horse that is even now destroying the Democratic Party. In this video, we're going to take a look at precisely why BLM represents such an existential threat to the leftist establishment in our nation. And we're going to see the myriad of ways in which BLM activists are beginning to bring the Democrat Party and its leadership to their knees. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here. I certainly hope you're all doing well in the midst of what appears to be our increasingly insane country. If this is your first time here with us and you're looking for some daily encouragement and optimism, as well as some analysis to help you make sense of the insanity, then you have found your oasis here on this channel. We post 2 videos a day analyzing current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so that you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel, where each and every day we have the privilege of together celebrating the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Now, before we dive into things here, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's the makers of the beautiful Fighter Flare flashlight. Now, this is something you're gonna absolutely love. One of the coolest things, well, really one of the best things you can do to invest in for your protection when the lights go out is a 6-in-1 beauty, which comes with a 3,000 mAh solar-powered recharging battery equipped with a high and low beam light that you can see from miles away. It has an emergency strobe light, it has a compass, a wire and rope cutter, it has an emergency glass breaker hammer, and a high-powered military-grade magnet. Wow, it's absolutely amazing. And best of all, as a Turley talker, you get 25% off the new 2020 model before they sell out. But supply is limited, so don't wait. Click on that link below and get your super awesome Fighter Flare flashlight today. All right, gang, let's dive in here. Just days after he announced that he was running for president, good old Kanye West was asked by Forbes if he was concerned that he'd be siphoning off black voters from the Democrat Party and thus costing Joe Biden the election. Well, here's how Kanye responded to that. Check this out. That is a form of racism and white supremacy and white control to say that all black people need to be Democrat and to assume that me running is me splitting the vote. I was told that if I vote on Trump, my music career would be over. I was threatened into being one of the party. I was threatened as a black man in the Democratic Party. And that's what the Democrats are doing emotionally to my people. Threatening them to the point where this white man can actually tell a black man, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Wow. Now, I find 2 things fascinating about that answer and his interview overall. First, Kanye West's denunciation of white supremacy and white control, along with his reference to my people, are sentiments fully in line with the rhetoric of Black Lives Matter, which Kanye has publicly embraced. Kanye is indeed a supporter of Black Lives Matter, BLM. But secondly, you'll also notice, either from the quote or just through reading the interview as a whole on Forbes, Kanye had absolutely nothing disparaging to say whatsoever about the Republican Party. I mean, I looked throughout the entire interview, not one hint of criticism for the GOP. Instead, Kanye reserved his wrath for the Democrats. Indeed, we did a video last week on this interview that we entitled Kanye West Declares War on the Democrats. But what's so essential for us to understand here is that, as it turns out, Kanye West is not an anomaly. No question, sure, the guy's unique. But make no mistake, his anti-Democrat sentiments are shared by a number of activists in the BLM movement. You know, in the same interview, West excoriated the sacred cow of the modern left, which is abortion. Abortion is the sacred cow of the Democrats. Listen to what he had to say about Planned Parenthood, the #1 abortion provider in the nation. And I'm quoting him here. Planned Parenthoods, again, this is Kanye West, Planned Parenthoods have been placed inside cities by white supremacists to do the devil's work, close quote. Now, he's presumably referring here to Margaret Sanger, right, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who indeed was notoriously racist and promoted abortion contraception, particularly among blacks. But West's comments came on the heels of an open letter signed by more than 350 current and former staffers of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York, as well as about 800 donors, supporters, and volunteers of Planned Parenthood, all of whom declared that the organization's founder, Margaret Sanger, was indeed a racist white woman and that the organization suffers from institutional racism as a whole. In fact, signers of the letter were successful in getting the head of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York ousted in response to her supposed racial insensitivity, according to staff complaints. So while obviously designating Margaret Sanger a racist eugenicist is commonplace in the rhetoric of the right, and we would certainly agree with that, nevertheless, for the left to come out and declare Sanger a horrific racist, I mean, this is utterly and totally unprecedented. So what's going on here? Why is the Democrat Party and its sacred cows suddenly coming under attack by the very Democrats they supposedly represent? Well, I think what's essential here is that we actually jettison the whole notion of left and right and trying to make sense of this. Instead, in order to see what's really going on in the Democratic Party right now in their embracing of the BLM movement, I think it's better to think in terms of modernity and postmodernity. And again, if you're a regular to this channel, those two terms are rather commonplace for you by now. But for the benefit of everyone else, okay, what's so key to understand the civil war that's erupting in the Democratic Party is we have to understand it in relation to the two philosophical movements known as modernity on the one hand and postmodernity on the other. Simply put, modernity was a philosophical school of thought. It was born in the 18th century Enlightenment when everybody's wearing wigs and stuff, right? And it involved the enthronement of scientific rationalism as the one true way of knowing the world. It was a one-size-fits-all form of knowledge for all peoples, times, and places. Modern people basically believe that pre-modern, tribal, ancestral, monarchical beliefs and practices had ceded their authority to forms of truth and reasoning that were now derived from autonomous human reason. And what we have to understand is that modernity is in many respects the philosophical roots of modern day liberalism, of the progressive left. This is why the left is always pushing the envelope, with whatever, LGBT rights, transgender rights, whatever. All these new rights that seem to just pop out of midair, they're always doing that because they are modern. They're always disparaging the old and celebrating the new and unprecedented. That's what makes them modernists. Here's the problem for Democrats and for leftist liberals as a whole. Global populations in general and Western populations in particular are no longer modernists. We've by and large rejected modernity, and instead scholars have recognized we've become postmodern. So unlike modernists, postmodernists don't believe in a one-size-fits-all, Marxist or globalist political economic system. Instead, postmodernists value the role of culture, custom, ethnicity, and race in cultivating our perceptions about the world and life. And so as a result, then, the world is transforming into two grand political options. Either populations are embracing what scholars call civic nationalism, which is Trump's vision for our nation, for the world, or populations are beginning to collapse into what we call ethno-nationalist tribalism, which is the Black Lives Matter vision for our nation. So civic nationalist movements are all seeking to restore the respective national sovereignties by reaffirming border security, economic nationalism to protect our jobs, and a reaffirmation of our nation's culture, custom, and traditions that unite us as one people. So this is what we saw in the back-to-back victories back in 2016 with Brexit in June and Donald Trump in November, right? However, while civic nationalists are defending the sovereignty of the nation state, which is generally multi-ethnic, ethno-tribalist, ethno-nationalist tribalism is characterized by a turn toward a more homogenous racial and cultural makeup, where populations are increasingly balkanizing as they turn towards their own ethnic identity and loyalties based on kin and race as the basis for a postmodern social order. And so did you notice in this postmodern world that's becoming either civic nationalist or ethno-nationalist, where on earth is there any room for the progressive left? Where is it? Well, it's simple. There isn't any. Their modernist roots have died. Either you go with the ethno-nationalists, but if you're going to do that, you have to be of a certain racial ethnicity or else forget it. There's no place for you. Or you're going to have to join the Trumpian civic nationalists. It's one or the other. And we can already see BLM activists calling white liberals to account as they more and more transform the Democratic Party into an ethno-nationalist party. Postmodern BLM activists are shifting the party away from the white liberal center towards a neo-segregationist ethno-nationalism. Recently in Los Angeles, Professor Melina Abdullah, she's the co-founder of Black Lives Matter LA, she denounced the city of Los Angeles as filled with what she called liberal white supremacists. Responding to a sign held up by one of the protesters that said, F Donald Trump, Abdullah said, as we talk about a white supremacist terrorist like Donald Trump, remember that we live in a city that is largely liberal white supremacists. So when you say F Donald Trump, make sure you also say F Eric Garcetti. Garcetti is the ultra-left mayor of Los Angeles, who recently announced $150 million in cuts to the LA Police Department to show his fidelity to the BLM call to defund the police. But did you catch what she said? You'll notice that according to Abdullah, the fact that she and the mayor are both liberals no longer means they're on the same political side. A white liberal can now be equated as being no different than a supposed white supremacist terrorist like Trump. Even left-wing cancel culture organizations are collapsing over the shift away from white liberals to this more ethno-nationalist tribalism. You may be familiar with the left-wing organization called Sleeping Giants. They've taken responsibility for putting Bill O'Reilly out of a job and deplatforming such figures as Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos. Well, now there's a major rift between the founders of the organization. Nandini Jami, the co-founder of Sleeping Giants, has recently published a bitter public resignation where she accuses the other co-founder, Matt Rivets, of using his white male privilege to oppress her. As it turns out, Jami is now unleashing the mob on Rivets, demanding his own resignation. And so in her attack against a white liberal, cancel culture is canceling itself. The examples go on and on, from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez accusing Nancy Pelosi of racism, to the BLM insistence of racially segregated dorms, orientations, and graduation ceremonies on our nation's college campuses. The modern-day left is actually being swallowed up by a postmodern tribalism that bears little resemblance to the white liberalism of Hillary Clinton or Chuck Schumer. The days of progressivism appear to be over in the Democrat Party. A reversion to tribalism and resegregation are increasingly becoming the new normal. And so by inviting BLM into their highest ranks of the party, the Democrats have welcomed a Trojan Horse. On the one hand, they believe that BLM identity politics are their ticket back to political power. On the other hand, the postmodern tribalism and neo-segregationist sentiments of BLM activists are openly attacking the overwhelmingly white Democratic leadership along with liberalism's sacred cows. Having given BLM activists a platform to air their grievances, Democrats are powerless to silence their newfound critics. Having placed their hopes in the promise of postmodernism, the modern Democrat Party has unwittingly embraced its own demise. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my video I just uploaded on Goya food sales skyrocketing in a massive backlash against far-left boycott of Goya's pro-Trump CEO. It's going to absolutely make your day and pump you up. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.